What if everything you were told about your loved one's death was wrong? In a world where death certificates become final chapters, one man's story proves that official documents can lie. Your wife didn't survive the crash. 6 simple words that shattered Darius Johnson's world. For 6 long years, he lived with grief as his constant companion, visiting an empty grave and holding on to fading memories. But sometimes, when systems fail us, the truth waits silently to be found. Because while Darius mourned in Atlanta, his wife was alive, breathing, walking, and building a new life in St. Marisol, a small Caribbean nation thousands of miles away. Not as Keisha Johnson, but as a woman named Tanisha with no memory of her husband or her past. Have you ever felt that persistent whisper telling you something wasn't right, even when everyone, experts, authorities, friends, insisted you were wrong? That nagging feeling that made you question your own sanity? That's exactly what Darius experienced, day after day, as he stared at official reports declaring his wife dead. What would you do if you discovered the person you grieved for, whose funeral you arranged, whose clothes you donated, whose absence left a hole in your heart, was actually alive? How would you handle learning that while you were crying at a memorial service, they were walking around, breathing the same air but living a completely different life? Today, we're diving into one of the most remarkable stories of loss, intuition, and second chances, a true account that challenges everything we believe about closure and official truths. If this story sounds impossible, stick around. Because by the end of this video, you'll question whether any truth is truly final. And if you've ever had that gut feeling that wouldn't go away, hit that like button right now and let us know in the comments. Before tragedy struck, Darius and Keisha Johnson were the couple friends envied. They met during their junior year at Georgia State University. He was studying engineering, she was pursuing psychology. Their first conversation happened over spilled coffee in the campus library, and from that moment, something clicked. When I met Keisha, I knew she was different, Darius once told his best friend. She looked at the world like it was full of possibilities, not problems. After graduation, they settled in a modest 2-bedroom home in East Atlanta. Darius worked his way up at a construction firm, while Keisha counseled troubled teens at a local community center. Evenings found them cooking together in their small kitchen, weekends were for hiking trails outside the city, and holidays meant hosting famous barbecues where neighbors would gather until late. Their home wasn't fancy, white walls covered with framed photos, mismatched furniture they'd collected over years, and a backyard garden Keisha tended with care. What made it special was the laughter that filled each room and the dreams they shared around their dining table. They had plans, starting a family within 2 years, buying land to build their own home, opening Keisha's private practice, and traveling to places they'd only seen in magazines. The money they couldn't spend immediately went into a vacation fund jar labeled "Adventures Waiting to Happen." Marriage isn't always easy, Keisha wrote in her journal, discovered later. But loving Darius is. He reminds me daily why we chose each other. After 5 years of marriage, as their careers demanded more time and stress began wearing them down, they decided to use their savings for a much-needed break. The destination, Belize, crystal waters, lush forests, and disconnection from emails and phone calls. 2 weeks of just us, Darius promised as they packed their bags. No work, no stress, just reconnecting. The night before their flight, they sat on their porch swing, drinking wine and listing all they planned to do: snorkeling, hiking to waterfalls, sampling local food, and simply being together without distractions. Neither knew those shared dreams on the porch would be their last. The next morning, They headed to the airport, excited for their tropical escape, completely unaware of the storm gathering over the Caribbean. Flight 237 took off from Atlanta International at 8:17 a.m. Weather reports had warned of storms over the Caribbean, but nothing beyond what experienced pilots handle routinely. 3 hours into the flight, as passengers watched movies and flight attendants served drinks, the calm shattered. The first violent jolt threw bags from overhead compartments. Oxygen masks dropped as the plane plummeted 5,000 feet in seconds. The captain's voice crackled through speakers, attempting to reassure passengers while the aircraft fought against winds now reaching 80 miles per hour. "We're experiencing severe turbulence," he announced. "Please remain seated with seatbelts fastened." Those were the last words recorded. At 11:42 a.m., Flight 237 disappeared from radar somewhere between Cuba and Belize. Search and rescue teams mobilized immediately, but the storm made their efforts nearly impossible. Darius was mowing the lawn when the doorbell rang. 2 officers stood on his porch, faces grim. "There's been an accident involving Flight 237, one said. "May we come in?" The next 72 hours blurred together. Darius sat glued to news reports, answering calls from the airline, providing Keisha's dental records, and waiting, desperately waiting, for any sign of survivors. On day 4, officials confirmed what everyone feared: the plane had crashed into the sea. Based on debris patterns and ocean currents, no passengers could have survived the impact and subsequent conditions. "We've recovered enough to make positive identifications," the lead investigator explained during a family briefing. "I'm sorry, but your wife has been confirmed deceased." Darius received a death certificate, an urn with what they claimed were Keisha's remains, and condolence letters from the airline. Friends surrounded him at the memorial service, but he barely registered their presence. Nights became his enemy. Their bed, too empty. Her scent, fading from pillows. Her voice, silent in voicemails he played repeatedly. "I should have been with her," he told his mother. "We always promised to face everything together." 6 months passed. Then a year. Grief counseling helped, but questions gnawed at him. Something felt wrong. Then he found the online forum for family members of victims. Anonymous posts mentioned strange details: a passenger list that changed 3 times, a fisherman who claimed to see survivors washed ashore miles from the official crash site, recovered luggage with no water damage. Most disturbing was a maintenance worker's account: "I helped clean debris." Some items were dry, like they'd never touched water. And the aircraft section we found? The brake patterns didn't match a water impact. These inconsistencies didn't prove anything, but they fed the feeling Darius couldn't shake, that the full story of what happened to Flight 237 remained untold. What actually happened to Keisha defied all official explanations. When Flight 237 began breaking apart, she was thrown from the aircraft before the main fuselage hit water. The impact knocked her unconscious, but her seat cushion, the one flight attendants always say can be used as a flotation device, actually saved her life. Ocean currents carried her away from the main wreckage and toward the small island nation of St. Mauricio. 18 hours after the crash, Manuel Diaz and his son were checking fishing nets near a remote beach when they spotted something unusual. There was a woman, barely breathing, washed up among the driftwood, Manuel later explained. Her clothes were torn, her body bruised, but somehow, she was alive. The fishermen rushed her to their village, where Elena, a retired nurse, assessed her injuries, broken ribs, severe concussion, dehydration, and deep cuts requiring stitches. In a place with limited resources, modern medical facilities stood hours away, so the village cared for her using traditional methods passed down through generations. For weeks, Keisha drifted between consciousness and darkness. When she finally opened her eyes fully, the villagers' relief quickly turned to concern. "Who are you?" Elena asked gently. Keisha stared back blankly. I don't know." The head injury had wiped her memory clean. She couldn't recall her name, her husband, or how she'd ended up on their shore. The only word that repeatedly fell from her lips was Keisha, though whether it was her name or someone else's, she couldn't say. Do you think memories can truly be erased, or are they just locked away, waiting for the right key? If you've ever experienced déjà vu or sudden memory flashes from childhood, drop a comment below about what triggered those memories to return. As months passed, the woman they now called Tanisha, derived from hearing her mumble, Kadanisha, during fever dreams, slowly built a new identity. The village welcomed her as one of their own. She learned their language, adopted their customs, and eventually moved into a small house near the beach. She began working at the local school, teaching English she somehow remembered perfectly despite forgetting her own past. She made friends, attended community gatherings, and to outsiders, appeared content with her new life. But nights brought troubling dreams, a man's laughter, the smell of a specific cologne, a porch swing moving in evening breeze. She'd wake with tears on her cheeks, yearning for someone she couldn't name. "I feel like I left something important behind," she confided to Elena. "Sometimes I look at couples walking together and my heart aches like it's been torn in half." Her nightstand drawer held a collection of drawings, sketches of a man's face, always the same features, though she couldn't explain who he was. Sometimes she'd catch herself automatically cooking meals for two or turning to speak to someone who wasn't there. Despite creating a new life as Tanisha, Keisha's heart remembered what her mind could not. While the world moved on, Darius remained stuck in the questions. His friends saw it as denial, the first stage of grief he couldn't progress beyond. His family worried as the second year passed, then the third. "The reports don't add up," he would insist when they suggested therapy. The timing of the distress calls, the scattered debris pattern, the contradicting witness statements, something's wrong with the official story. His boss eventually stopped asking when he'd returned to full-time work. His friends stopped inviting him to gatherings where couples mingled. His parents stopped mentioning Keisha's name after seeing how it still brought tears to his eyes 4 years later. But Darius couldn't let go because he never felt Keisha was truly gone. He maintained a connection through daily rituals that others found concerning. Every morning, he placed a fresh cup of coffee, 2 sugars, splash of vanilla creamer, on her side of the breakfast table. Her birthday meant baking her favorite lemon cake and watching her favorite movies. Their anniversary meant reading aloud the vows they'd written. "I know how this looks," he confessed to his only remaining close friend. "But it's not that I can't accept she died. It's that everything inside me screams she didn't." 5 years after the crash, when Keisha's parents packed away her childhood belongings and finally sold her old piano, they begged Darius to do the same with their Atlanta home. "You need to start fresh," her father urged. "Keisha would want that for you." But Darius couldn't explain the sensation that followed him, like someone calling his name from just beyond hearing range. He'd wake at night, certain Keisha had spoken to him. Twice, he thought he glimpsed her in crowds. A therapist diagnosed him with complicated grief disorder. His doctor prescribed medication. His sister created dating profiles he never used. "I'm not crazy," he told his reflection each morning. "And I'm not done searching." By year 6, Darius stood alone in his conviction. Everyone else had accepted the comfortable certainty of death certificates and memorial stones. But Darius kept collecting inconsistencies, following faint trails, and listening to his heart, the only proof he needed that somewhere, somehow, Keisha still existed. Aaron Washington wasn't looking for a missing person when he arrived in St. Marisol. The 34-year-old freelance journalist came to report on how small Caribbean nations were recovering from recent hurricanes. His first week passed uneventfully, interviewing officials, photographing rebuilding efforts, and gathering quotes for his article. Then came the conversation that changed everything. "You should visit the school in Pescador Village," a local guide suggested. "They have a teacher there who appeared out of nowhere after a storm 6 years ago. The children adore her." Aaron's curiosity led him to the small coastal community where he met the woman everyone called Tanisha. Something about her seemed oddly familiar, though he couldn't place why. "Where are you originally from?" he asked during their interview about the school. "Here," she answered with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "This is my home." But the villagers told a different story when Aaron asked around. They described finding her washed ashore, injured and without memory. The timing, 6 years ago, clicked in Aaron's mind. He'd covered the Flight 237 disaster as a rookie reporter. Back in his hotel room, Aaron pulled up old articles and passenger lists. When he saw Keisha Johnson's photo, his coffee cup nearly slipped from his hand. The resemblance to Tanisha was unmistakable, despite the different hairstyle and the subtle changes 6 years had carved into her face. What if the answer to a mystery that captivated headlines for weeks was simply living in plain sight? What if all the experts, all the investigations, all the conclusive reports were completely wrong? Aaron spent the next 3 weeks gathering evidence. He interviewed the fishermen who found her, photographed the area where she washed ashore, and secretly recorded conversations with Tanisha where certain topics, Atlanta, plane travel, even the name, Darius, triggered visible emotional responses she couldn't explain. Most compelling was the journal Elena shared, pages of Tanisha's drawings showing the same man's face repeatedly, alongside sketches of a house that matched the Johnson residence in Atlanta. With enough evidence to justify contact but not enough to publish, Aaron faced a moral choice. Going public could traumatize a woman still healing. Instead, he found Darius Johnson's email through social media. His message was simple: "Mr. Johnson, I believe your wife Keisha is alive in St. Marisol. I have photos, video, and testimony from those who rescued her. She doesn't remember her past, but she might remember you if given the chance. Please respond if you'd like to know more." For 3 days, Aaron heard nothing. Then his phone rang at 2 a.m. "This is Darius Johnson," said the voice. "Tell me everything." The 12 days between Aaron's call and Darius's flight to St. Marisol were the longest of his life. He swung between wild hope and crushing doubt hourly. What if it's not her? He asked his sister, who helped him pack. Or worse, what if it is, but she doesn't know me anymore? He stared at the photographs Aaron had sent, a woman teaching children, laughing at a market, walking along a beach. Her face matched Keisha's, but her expression seemed to belong to a stranger. Darius took just one small suitcase, but packed every photo album they'd owned. If Keisha's memory needed jogging, he'd come prepared. The journey was grueling: Atlanta to Miami, Miami to Santo Domingo, then a tiny prop plane to St. Marisol's only airport, little more than a strip of tarmac beside the ocean. Aaron met him there, looking nervous. "She doesn't know you're coming," Aaron warned as they drove along coastal roads. "I wasn't sure how to prepare her for this." "What would you risk to learn the truth about someone you loved? Would you travel across oceans? Would you face possible rejection? Would you open old wounds? Drop a comment with what lengths you'd go to for closure, or a miracle." Each mile brought Darius closer to the moment that would either heal or permanently break him. The island's beauty, lush mountains meeting clear blue water, barely registered through his anxiety. "We'll reach Pescator Village in about 20 minutes, Aaron said, checking his watch. "It's almost noon, so she'll be finishing her morning class." Darius's hands trembled as he pulled out the small velvet box from his pocket, Keisha's wedding ring, which officials had returned after the crash. The gold band caught the sunlight, and memories flooded back: her smile as he slid it on her finger, her promise to wear it forever. "I'm ready," Darius said, though his racing heart suggested otherwise. Aaron parked outside the small school building, a blue concrete structure with children's artwork decorating the windows. He motioned for Darius to wait in the car. "Let me check if she's alone," he said before disappearing inside. Darius watched the door, each second stretching painfully. When it finally opened again, time stopped completely. There she stood, Keisha, wearing a simple yellow dress, her hair different, her face thinner, but unmistakably his wife. She looked confused at first, staring at the unfamiliar car. Then her eyes found Darius as he stepped out. Her expression shifted from curiosity to stunned recognition. The notebook she carried fell to the ground. Darius couldn't move, couldn't speak. 6 years of imagined reunions hadn't prepared him for this reality. "Do I know you?" she asked, her voice barely audible. But her body betrayed her words. She took an instinctive step forward, her hand reaching out before pulling back. "Keisha," Darius whispered. "It's me. It's Darius." Her eyes widened. "That name. I've heard it in my dreams." He walked toward her slowly, afraid she might run. "We've been married for 11 years. You disappeared 6 years ago in a plane crash. Everyone thought you were dead." Tanisha's legs gave way, and she sat hard on the school steps. "I'm not Keisha. I'm Tanisha. I've been Tanisha for 6 years." But tears streamed down her face as contradicting emotions battled within her. Darius knelt before her, not touching her yet. "Your name is Keisha Johnson. You're a psychologist from Atlanta. You love lemon cake and hate thunderstorms. You sleep on the left side of the bed. You have a small birthmark behind your right ear." Her hand instinctively went to that exact spot. "Why didn't you find me sooner?" she asked, the first spark of anger flashing. 6 years. I've been here for 6 years. They told me you were dead. They gave me your death certificate. I had a funeral, Darius explained, his voice breaking. I never stopped looking, never stopped hoping. Something broke open inside Tanisha. Memories flooded back, not all, but enough. Her hands reached for his face, touching it like she was reading Braille. "Darius," she whispered, this time with recognition. "My Darius." Over the next week, the pieces of the puzzle came together. Darius, Tanisha, and Aaron sat with Manuel, Elena, and local officials, comparing timelines and evidence. The truth was simpler and more frustrating than anyone expected. The plane broke apart before it hit water, explained Captain Morales, who had led local rescue efforts 6 years earlier. We found survivors scattered across 3 different islands. In the chaos, with limited communication between islands, some people slipped through the cracks. Flight 237's passenger list had been corrupted during transmission. The airline relied on recovered boarding passes and family confirmations to identify victims. Since Keisha boarded with Darius, and he reported her missing, officials marked her as deceased without waiting for physical confirmation. When we found her, she had nothing, no ID, no phone, nothing to connect her to her past, Elena said. And her injuries were severe. We focused on keeping her alive, not finding out who she was. Dr. Ramirez, who examined Keisha years after her initial recovery, explained the medical reality. She suffered what we call dissociative amnesia triggered by traumatic brain injury. Her brain created a protective barrier around her memories. The new identity wasn't fake, her mind genuinely rebuilt itself from scratch. The most damning revelation came from international investigation records. The search for Flight 237 had been called off after just 9 days due to budget constraints and dangerous conditions. Bodies still missing were presumed lost at sea. They literally stopped looking, Aaron noted, reviewing the documents. They filed paperwork instead of continuing the search. For the small community of Pescator Village, Tanisha was simply a woman who needed help. They gave her shelter, work, and respect. They never questioned her presence because, in their eyes, she belonged with them. We didn't hide her, Manuel insisted. We just didn't know anyone was looking. Rebuilding a relationship after 6 years apart wasn't as simple as picking up where they left off. Darius and Keisha, who still sometimes responded only to Tanisha, faced a mountain of challenges. It's like trying to fit together 2 different puzzles, Keisha explained to their therapist during their first joint session. I have 6 years of memories as Tanisha, with friends, habits, and a whole life that Darius wasn't part of. Darius nodded. And I have 6 years of grief that she never experienced. They started slowly. Darius rented a small house near the village instead of immediately asking her to return to Atlanta. Each day, they spent a few hours together, looking at photos, sharing stories, and gently exploring what remained of their bond. Dr. Martinez, a specialist in memory recovery, worked with Keisha 3 times weekly. Memory isn't like a light switch, she explained to them both. It returns in fragments, triggered by sensory experiences, smells, sounds, tastes. Some memories came back easily, their wedding day, vacations they'd taken, the names of mutual friends. Others remained locked away, perhaps permanently. The village watched their journey with mixed emotions. They were happy for Tanisha but feared losing her. She had become an essential part of their community, their English teacher, event organizer, and friend. These people saved me, she told Darius one evening as they walked along the beach. I can't just disappear from their lives. Darius faced his own struggle, accepting that his wife wasn't the same woman who boarded the plane 6 years ago. Tanisha was more confident, more direct, and spoke with an accent that hadn't existed before. I'm falling in love with you all over again, he confessed. Both versions of you. For months into their reunion, they faced the decision they'd been avoiding, where and how to build their future. Atlanta represented Keisha's past, while St. Marisol had become Tanisha's home. What if we don't have to choose? Keisha suggested one night. What if we create something new that honors both our lives? 1 year after their reunion, Darius and Keisha now split their time between Atlanta and St. Marisol. They renovated a small beach house where Keisha continues teaching part-time. In Atlanta, they advocate for improved plane crash protocols and victim identification. Their story exposes the dangerous gaps in disaster response systems. How many other, confirmed deaths, might actually be people living with forgotten identities? How many families accept official reports without question, when perhaps they shouldn't? When we hand our trust to authorities, whether medical examiners, government agencies, or airline officials, we expect thoroughness and truth. But systems fail. Papers get filed. Searches end. And sometimes, people fall through the cracks. What happened to Darius and Keisha matters not just because it's remarkable, but because it challenges us to question what we accept as final. It reminds us that grief, hope, and intuition deserve equal respect. Their journey also proves something extraordinary about human connection. Despite memory loss, despite new identities and 6 years apart, something deeper than conscious thought kept pulling them back together. Can true love survive when everything else is lost? When memory fades, when years pass, when lives take entirely different paths? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Has someone ever returned to your life after you thought they were gone forever? If this story teaches us anything, it's that second chances come in unexpected forms. Sometimes the endings we accept aren't endings at all, just pauses before the next chapter begins. Remember how we started: official documents can lie. But the heart knows a truth that no paper can disprove. If you found this story as incredible as we did, please like this video, subscribe to Crazy Crime Files, and share with someone who needs to believe in miracles again.